Hey guys, Mishka here. Very common question I get asked, whether it be on Discord, YouTube, or Reddit, is whether this game is worth it. Should you buy OrbusVR? The short answer is yes, but let's go ahead and explore all of what Orbus has to offer. The world of OrbusVR, called Patriel, is fairly large. There's the main city of Highsteppe and 5 different overworld zones, each about a square kilometer in size, which leads to an overall overworld size of about 6 square kilometers. The DLC zones are about half a square kilometer each, giving another 2 square kilometers. There's also several dungeons and raids, which leads to an even larger world. You start near the city of Highsteppe. This is the main city of the game where you'll find most of the players when they're not out adventuring. The player house is also located here, as well as several NPCs which will grant missions and quests. Outside the city gates is the untamed lands of Highsteppe, which is what the city's named for. Designed for levels 1 through 10, there's plenty to explore here, including caves, lakes, and a few public events. This will hold true for each of the other zones as well. They're not just open areas of land with a few monsters placed here and there. There are plenty of events taking place constantly and always something to do, which we'll get more into later. Heading further out from Highsteppe, you enter the Rainforest with lush trees and vegetation. Tigers roam freely here, and civilization is reduced to just 2 outposts with only a handful of NPCs in each. This zone is meant for characters level 11 through 15. Moving further into the world and higher up the food chain, the Lamavora battlefield, designed for levels 16 through 20, is the location of a great battle from the past. Rusted armor and pieces of weapons scatter the plains here, and broken pieces of castles lay in ruins nearby. Holthine's Basin is an archipelago connected by a series of stone bridges. Meant for levels 21 through 25, the docks here make for great fishing and unique trading opportunities. An ancient temple lays hidden in the mountainous area on the mainland here, waiting to be explored. The Wastelands is a strange mountain range full of mutated and warped creatures. The wildlife is nearly unrecognizable and strange sights are the norm. Whatever caused these mutations also led to the creatures here to be extremely powerful, so proceed with caution. This area is meant for levels 25 through 30, which is the max level a character can become. Along with the 5 overworld zones, there are 6 dungeons you can conquer. The Crypt of Highsteppe is being ruled by a Lich King who's sapping energy from the life tree of Highsteppe. Will you venture down into the crypts and stop him and the troll he commands? Diving deep into the ancient sewers which lie below Highsteppe, you'll face creatures which have long dwindled there and mutated to their surroundings, including a giant mutated rat and a slime boss. The airship dungeon is a unique one, in that it doesn't take the traditional form of a dungeon with a layout that you delve down through, fighting packs of monsters as you make your way to the boss room. Instead, you'll take off on an airship and soar high above the land of Patriel. During your journey, the ship will be attacked by enemy creatures, teleported on board by a hidden nefarious foe who sees a perfect opportunity to take you off the playing board. In the broken halls of Highsteppe, Minotaur and Gorgon are wreaking havoc. The Minotaur can enrage himself, dealing extra damage, and the Gorgon is known to be able to kill adventurers with just a gaze. When most of the citizens of Patriel fled to Highsteppe, a group stayed behind and chose to fend for themselves in the Wastelands. This group, known as the Scavs, took over a cave that outsiders have dubbed Scav's Den, where they recently discovered an abandoned mining tunnel. Although it's unknown what the Scavs have unearthed inside this cave, rumor has it they found a creature from the not-so-distant past lurking in its depths. Although a temple by name, the ancient temple dungeon seems to have a much darker history. Dating back eons, you'll find concrete slabs and manacles, as well as holding cells inside, although it looks like whatever was once contained has now broken free. Intended for a party of 10 level 30 characters, the Ruins of Guild City raid provides 5 bosses, each with unique mechanics designed to push you to your limits. You'll have to work together as a group in order to defeat these bosses. If you truly want to push yourself, there's also the hard mode raid, with increased damage, bosses with much more health, and the threat of most mechanics one-shotting you. Another raid is currently in the works, but as of the making of this video has not been released yet. There are currently 3 world bosses in OrbusVR. Each one has unique mechanics that make them a challenge to take on, and you'll likely want at least a dozen allies to help you. Bjorn Staffroot is a giant overgrown sentient tree that has become angry and is attempting to tear down a local temple just outside the gates of Highsteppe. The Scav Giant. The mutations that plague the realm hit this scav fighter particularly hard. Growing to multiple times the size of most scavs, he spends his time terrorizing those unlucky enough to cross his path. The ancient magic that caused chaos and corruption throughout the realms has formed itself into a beast of epic proportions. The Chaos Giant roams the Lamavora battlefields, waiting for a foe worthy of its time. If you want even more of a challenge, each of the world bosses can also be enraged, leading to a fight unlike any other. Typically, fights with these enraged world bosses are scheduled by the community ahead of time, and you're going to want at least 30 additional players to help out in these fights. Throughout the world of OrbusVR, you may see giant beams of light coming from the skies. These denote public events that are either getting ready to take place or are in the midst of happening. Players band together in these events to complete a certain task, such as defending the gates of Highsteppe from attack, closing a portal that sends monsters into the world, or gathering materials inside of a cave. These events grant lots of XP and rewards and are great ways to find other players adventuring in the same zone as you. There are currently 8 classes you can play in the game, and you're free to switch between them outside of combat. Warriors are the first of the 2 tank classes. Swing your sword in preset combos to activate certain effects, and use your shield to block damage. Swap between a small shield for more damage and less protection, or go with a large shield for twice as much mitigation but a fraction of damage. You can use your sword to charge to enemies and blow a horn to pull aggro and shield allies. Paladins are the other tank class, and they're more of a reactive class. There are several mechanics for the Paladin to deal with. A large part of playing Paladin is managing the charges that you get on your hammer. You can have up to 5 charges, and you gain these charges by taking damage. You can also raise your hammer to the skies to gain 2 charges on a short cooldown. Paladins can use these charges to do a variety of things, including dealing damage, throwing and teleporting to their hammer, shooting lightning at enemies, or even healing their allies. Paladins also have a shield that they can use on a moderate cooldown by raising their offhand to the sky. This will block 99.9% of damage, effectively making them immortal for 1.5 seconds. Paladins also have Librams. The leftmost Libram is an AoE taunt, the middle is a self-heal, and the right Libram will cause your next hit to deal double damage or your next heal to be twice as effective. Musketeer is the first of the 2 healing classes. This class revolves around shooting healing orbs from your musket to either hit your allies or bounce them off enemies to create a large AoE heal. They've got insane damage mitigation and unrivaled healing potential. The Bard is the second healing class, and it takes more of a passive role. Your job as a Bard is to hit notes as they come down on your marimba. There are 8 different instruments that cause notes to come down in different patterns. Each instrument has a different passive effect that affects a moderate-sized area around you. After hitting an instrument's note 12 times, it charges a crescendo, which releases a more potent effect for that instrument. Examples include a large burst heal for the healing instrument, burst damage for the damage instruments, and movement boost for the speed instrument. The ranger uses their bow and special arrows to kill things from afar. Manage your timing as a precision ranger, or shoot as fast as you possibly can with a rapidity talent tree. Hit weak points on enemies as they appear for huge damage spikes, and use your trap to ensnare your foes to keep your distance. Make sure you keep as much distance as you can, as once you get past 15 or 30 meters, you gain additional damage. The Scoundrel is a gunslinger who specializes in critical hits. Curving your bullets to deal extra damage, you also manage a deck of cards that will give special boosts like poison dots, extra damage, armor debuffs, and more. The Shamans in Orbus use totems that they drop onto the field of battle to create different effects. You can summon orbs from the totems, raise shields, or even turn enemies into harmless frogs. Although there are no melee DPS classes in Orbus, it should be noted that the Shaman benefits from being close to their enemies. The closer you are, the more damage you'll deal. The Rune Mage is the class that draws most players into this game. Instead of using mana or memorize spell slots, mages use wands to draw runes in the air to create spells. The faster and more accurate you draw the spells, the more damage you do. Whatever class you end up playing, and keep in mind that you can play all 8 on the same character, it's important to note that this game is entirely skill-based. You will have to learn mechanics that require you to actively participate. This is no mouse and keyboard game where your rotation is clicking buttons. You're going to be actively aiming your bow, drawing your spells, and swinging your sword. Combat is unforgiving at the start, but that just really emphasizes that this takes practice and skill to succeed. If one class doesn't work out for you, there are several other choices for you to go with, and they all have unique playstyles. There are 2 methods of participating in PvP in OrbusVR. The first is organized battlegrounds. You queue up for a battlegrounds event, and when 7 others have also queued up, you fight in a 4v4 King of the Hill style event. There are 2 fortresses, one by each team's respawn, and one cave in the middle of the battlefield, each with a flag that you try to keep raised. It's a fun activity that really rewards those who are exceptional with their class. If organized murder isn't exactly your style and you want more spur-of-the-moment assassinations, you can opt into World PvP. When you do this, your name becomes red for everybody to see, and anybody else who also has PvP on can, and likely will, attack and kill you almost anywhere in the world. While you have PvP on, all XP you gain is increased by 10%. However, if you die, you drop all tradable items in your inventory. Overworld PvP can be a blast, especially when you have multiple people partaking in the same spot. Tied into Overworld PvP is the Trickster Goblin. The Trickster Goblin will spawn somewhere in the world every 4 hours. A message goes out to everybody online that the Goblin has spawned in a specific zone. At that point, many players will go to that zone and search the Goblin. Killing the Goblin can only be done by players in PvP, and it will drop a special token that can be used to purchase unique items in the game, like a flying carpet mount, special dyes, and cosmetic items that can't be found anywhere else. The Trickster Goblin is an adrenaline-fueled hunt, and once somebody's killed the Goblin and taken the token, they've essentially got a giant target on their back until they get back to safety in Highsteppe. Outside of combat, there are plenty of activities to keep you busy. Critters roam the world, and Pierre Sin is looking for prime specimens. He offers rewards for capturing smaller animals like squirrels, mice, birds, and other critters. There's well over a dozen different fish that can be caught in OrbusVR. Different fish show up in different bodies of water, and each requires certain lure components in order to capture them. Different fish show up in different bodies of water, and each requires specific lure components in order to catch them. Some fish are always biting, whereas some prefer certain times and specific weather conditions. Plants, commonly used for alchemy, can be found all over Patriel. Flowers, leaves, pine cones, and all other sorts of flora can be harvested. Along with this, ore can be mined in caves all over the world. What do you do with all these plants and ore, though? Crafting. Alchemy and artificing can augment your abilities or be a great source of income. Using the plants you harvest, you can create potions to heal you, turn you invisible, make you faster, make you more powerful, or just silly things like becoming a giant or turning your skin different colors. Using the ore you find, you can become an artificer and create custom enchantments that grant you extra damage and healing by performing certain actions in specific sequence. What actions and what sequence, you ask? That's entirely up to you. The artificing system allows you to create the enchantments that reward you for playing the class you already play it. Do you like casting fireballs and frosts? Use fire and frost tiles. Do you shoot an arrow every second? Use timing and damage tiles to give you a buff for doing what you already do. You can also craft cosmetic and furniture items. Whether it's a new chest piece, a painting, or even a snowman, there's plenty of options with the tinkering system. Gather blueprints and tinkering materials such as cloth and wood scraps, ground essence, and metal cogs from around the world, then piece them together in a 3D puzzle to finish the item. Once you finish creating items, you can use them to furnish your house alongside furniture, or you can sell the finished product to other players. There's also a full pet system in OrbusVR. Dragons are the most common pet found in the game, and you can breed them to make custom dragons with specific colors, spots, and even sizes. Dragons can also be trained to have bonuses such as picking up loot bags, gathering ore and alchemy ingredients as you travel, or reducing the cooldown of teleportation items. Dragons are more than just cute little cosmetics though. Throughout OrbusVR, there are several dragon races that will test your speed and dexterity. Race through the ruins of a castle, the crypts below Highsteppe City, and more. Each race also has a leaderboard showcasing the top 10 times in case you want to try and prove you're the best. With all these activities, you may be asking, what about quests? What about the main story? Well, there is indeed a main story called the Explorers League. Your heroic efforts to aid Highsteppe and reclaim the realm have not gone unnoticed, and the Explorers League has begun making plans to take back the desolate wastelands and battlefields of Patriel one outpost at a time. A series of camps have been established by the League throughout the realm, and they're requesting your assistance to bring supplies and aid, as well as to defend these camps as they begin to rebuild. Each camp has a series of quests, and along the way you begin to unlock things such as apprentice smiths at each camp. As you complete additional quests and missions, you'll also begin to start to grow these outposts into their own little towns. With the dev team being a small handful of programmers, the devs are very active within the community. Whether you're on the official community forums, the unofficial Discord server, or even endgame, it's not unusual to see a dev interacting with the community. Recently, devs have been dropping into Highsteppe several times a week in order to answer questions, help new players on their adventures, and even partake in raids. The devs also often implement many suggestions coming directly from the community, so you know your voice is always being heard. Journey into the hidden microsystems of Patriel, where you'll battle belligerent bugs and a few monstrous plants for the fate of a community of sentient lizards. Meet the residents of a quaint mushroom village and try your hand at catching moonflies. Defend a patrol outpost overrun by spiders. And finally, find your way through a maze of insect-infested tunnels deep underground in search of a sacred object. The DLC, Secrets of Mugwood, is available for $10, and while it offers 3 new zones in a large dungeon, it's by no means necessary to play the game. I highly recommend giving it a go if you've already got the main game, as it does give you another set of areas to explore, introduces the bounty map system, which will send you traveling around the new zones to find treasure chests full of unique and valuable loot. It also includes a whole bunch of transmogs, allowing you to change the way that your armor and weapons look. The dungeon and the DLC is designed to be able to be done solo or with a small group, and the boss uses a very interesting mechanic that isn't seen anywhere else in the game. There is an in-game shop where you can purchase cosmetics for cash. Everything in the shop is 100% cosmetic though, and gives no advantages over those who don't purchase from the shop. This is one of the great things about Orbus. You're never going to be outclassed just because somebody else has spent more money than you. The game is 100% skill-based. OrbusVR has a community unlike any other online game I've ever played. Almost every in-game player will take time out of their day to help newer players. Whether they need help with quests, learning spells, or having a portal open to another area, players get along great. The few toxic players that do show up don't typically stick around very long, and they usually see themselves out. The majority of players in my experience are in their upper teens to young 20s. There are plenty of kids, but there are also plenty of 30-plus players as well. You can create guilds called fellowships in-game, where like-minded players can band together under a common banner. Fellowships get their own fellowship hall, complete with a shared storage chest, dummies for combat practice, maps of the different zones in raid, and for those with a competitive streak, there's even an unofficial PvE score that's updated every single day to show which fellowship is the most dominant in regards to dungeons and raids. Alright, so I've talked a lot about the great things and what OrbusVR has to offer. Now let's take a look at some of the downsides. The first thing that any long-term Orbus player will tell you is that there are bugs in this game, and lots of them. The devs are great about pushing out patches for the easy-to-fix bugs, but some of them are much more elusive. Getting stuck in combat with no enemies around, ranger weak points getting stuck, and your class not switching properly aren't exactly infrequent. These are things that the community and the developers are working together to try and fix, and most players will let you know how to work around these issues if and when they do occur. Even though the player count isn't low per se, it's noteworthy that once you venture outside of Highsteppe, you likely won't run across more than 2 or 3 other adventurers out in the wilds at any given time. The tutorial for Orbus isn't exactly super intuitive either. There is a lot about this game that isn't explained well to players, and this can lead to confusion and frustration. Trust me, I understand, and that's why I've got close to 100 videos going into different aspects of this game. The community in the game will often serve you much better than any tutorials in the game, and if at any point you feel frustrated or stuck, you can ask pretty much any player in the game for help. If they don't know how to help you, they'll usually direct you to somebody who can. Lastly, the graphics. This was honestly the biggest concern for me when I first considered buying the game. The graphics are admittedly rather cartoonish. However, the more you play the game, the more immersed you get in it, and you honestly stop noticing it after a while. Yeah, it'd be great to have more realism in the graphics, but considering it's quest compatible, you have to give and take a little bit. So that's really the long and short of it. OrbusVR is the first VR MMORPG. It's constantly getting updated, it has tons to offer, and a great community of helpful players. I bought this game when it was selling for $40, and it's honestly the best VR purchase I've made. Since then, the price has dropped to $20, and even more content has been added. It's a great game that you can easily get lost in, and I highly recommend it. If you have any questions regarding Orbus, I'm more than happy to help out however I can. I'm fairly active in-game, and I get notifications on every comment on any of my videos, so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I am here to help out. Till then, as always, happy hunting.